All right, welcome to the Core podcast. We are here today with Alex Jabali, the CEO of the premier fighting game tournament called CEO.
Yay!
Hey, how are you doing, man?
I'm exhausted mentally, not physically. I'm in the best shape of my life currently, which is somehow impossible. But I'm good, man. I'm good. Excited to talk to you guys. It's been a while since I was out to Korea to see you.
Yeah, I mean, I think last time, when you came to Korea, that was quite a while ago. I mean, I remember we played a bunch of, we played like a bunch of Street Fighters, and I think you bodied me in most of them, but I think I did get you in five. But I don't know. Does that mean anything?
No, it rings a bell because I barely played five, so enjoy.
Okay.
I just never got into five, man. I had a crisis between Balrog when he came out and like Ryu. I didn't like a game where if I press a button, I'm dead. Like I never had a chance, and once they locked me down, I just don't block, man. So it was just like I have to just sit here and take it. Like this is boring. So I kind of fell out of it.
I just got hit with the "I don't even play this game"
Wow.
remark.
Yeah.
That's the most painful one, I think. Yeah.
I don't play any games. I'm just a TO, man.
Oh man, that's the ultimate excuse.
The
I'm just
ultimate
you played all
unblockable OS.
Okay, so Alex, you are known for playing in your own tournaments, and I know it's obviously there's reasons of quality assurance. You want to make sure the experience is good and all that stuff. But I mean, you are also competing too in the tournaments, and so you are very much a player also. Even though you say you're a TO, you're also a player. And so I guess one of the things I wanted to ask was, is there any reason? What is the reason you play in all your tournaments and make sure? I remember you even said that you played at least once every single game that's on in your tournaments as well. And
Yeah.
What's the philosophy behind that?
I mean, first, I was never meant to be a TO growing up. I just want to compete, at high level, travel, do all that stuff. And then, things happen the way CO is created. But I would ask people like, hey, do you want me to enter? Like, dude, if we can't beat you, we don't deserve to win. And so that was one of those things, just like, I'm just going to play. I don't have time to practice like everyone else. Back then I did Street Fighter 4. I really had time, but it wasn't until like the Capcom Pro Tour started like in 2013, 14, where it's like, okay, I'm not allowed to enter my own event anymore. And that, whatever the pro game is. And then just slowly, I still have that competitor spirit. I'll still enter old man games, see how I do without any practice. I'll only play it at the tournament. I'll warm up like one match, go, okay, it's back in my head, and I regret because sometimes I feel like I still can compete at a high level. I just don't have the time. But if I sat down with like the Menas of the world, Punks, and really played like I did back in Street Fighter 4, Justin Wong, Sophie Ortiz, Arturo and all them back in the day, I would be really good even now. I still have the reactions, I still have the execution, but it's like once 2017 hit, I started working at DreamHack. I couldn't enter a single DreamHack. So that was like 4 or 5 tournaments, major tournaments a year I wasn't allowed to enter. So that was a waste of like not a waste of time, but like I couldn't play. So that was a waste of me not being able to level up or play with people. But I always just liked playing. And some of the early days of how CO Star was like, the money I won from the locals, I went and bought Xbox 360s to put on the events that I did. So if I wasn't a good player, CO wouldn't exist. I wouldn't have had any money. I wasn't going to spend like my personal everyday money to run tournaments, So I used the money for most events and my personal money because I'm stuck. So I always like playing, and I've always had a rule. People are like, hey, how do you be a good TO? I'm like, first of all, every single game. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I say I've actually played every single game. But 95% of games I've ever hosted, I've played at least once or twice for at least an hour or so. Because you want to understand it. So when finals are going on, if somebody asks you like who's in the lead, you can actually pay attention or like, explain the game. So and obviously fighting games haven't really changed much. It's just a new mechanic here or there. But yeah, I think everyone should know how to play. And then I used to joke about do not trust a TO that cannot do 10 dragon punches in a row. If you slip up once, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you meet someone who goes, I'm going to run the biggest tournament of all time, like, can you do a dragon punch? And if they can't execute the most basic move of Street Fighter history, they should not be TOing. That's my opinion. So
Yeah, no, that's music to my ears. Yeah. But I mean, obviously you have a gaming background. Literally, the background right now with you is an arcade, and this is basically like when I was a kid, that would be my dream to have like a room with like
dream,
your own
much.
arcade cabinets. Yeah. But I guess I think we're somewhat around the same age. I think I was born in '83. I think you're
I'm
it'd
82.
be
I'm 42 years old, and I have no shame saying that.
yeah. But
Yay.
I mean, so yeah, we kind of grew up in the same generation. So I'm guessing, like you probably got in on the Super Nintendo Street Fighters, of course the arcade Street Fighters. That was 1992 World Warrior and all that stuff. What is your gaming background? And were you somebody who had like all the consoles, like, or were you somebody who had one console and was
Oh.
jealous that somebody else had the other
The
console?
envious friend that
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
had. Yeah.
And that's stories I've always wanted to talk about. Like, I have a rich history. I have 2 older brothers and an older sister. My oldest brother, they don't really game anymore. He's huge into VR. Omar, he's 52. He's 10 years older than me. We would play ColecoVision, Atari, Nintendo. The first memory that I remember at like 6 years old was always shutting off my brother's Zelda on NES and ruining his save file.
Wow.
Only for him to try and beat me up and my mom stop him. Like, no joke.
That's messed up.
Or even
man.
Gyromite with the Rob the Robot. I remember that, very faintly. But I used to go to arcades because of my older brothers. So I remember the Sega holographic game that they had. It was a big circular tube.
Oh, I think I know
Street Fighter
this.
1 with the 2 buttons. Like, so I was thrown into arcades as a kid. And then through the 90s, as I became like, 12, 13, 14, I'd go to an ice skating rink. I used to play hockey. And every Friday was like the hangout. It's called Rock on Ice. No longer exists. But they would have like a Mortal Kombat 1 machine, a Street Fighter 2. And so I would just go to the arcades. The McDonald's, I have the world's biggest McDonald's still less than 2 miles from my house.
Oh,
Back
wow.
then, that McDonald's had the first like Street Fighter Champion Edition. The
What?
malls did.
Even McDonald's. had
McDonald's
Uh,
with an arcade?
Wow.
What? Okay.
It had a huge dude. It had Killer Instinct, Virtual Fighter. They still have it, but it's every arcade in America is like redemption games, unless it's a
yeah.
specific thing. But I just played the hell out of it because my older brothers, and then the way I knew I was a competitor is, as most people know, I won the first ever Blockbuster video game challenge. I still have the trophy upstairs. It's the thing that Dr. Disrespect says he's the 2-time. I'm actually the real life winner of the first one ever on just
Wow.
Super Nintendo.
Oh.
And the story about it, and there's a YouTube video of the actual event that Blockbuster made after it happened to explain to future like stores how to run the tournament. And so
Oh.
that's like the first footage outside of the Nintendo 90 championships from 93 of me being like one of the world's first esports champions technically.
Yeah. That's a crazy story. I haven't heard the word Blockbuster in a long time. I mean, growing up,
That's
I don't know
nostalgic.
if you had that in
Australia
Australia.
had Blockbuster
You
as
guys had
well.
Blockbuster
Yes,
as well.
yes.
Okay, so like Blockbuster was like where you can rent for listeners who are not super old like we are. Blockbuster is basically a place where you can rent movies, but they also had games that you could
Yes.
rent, right? And
Uh-huh.
so this was a way where you can like play all the newest games without like spending like tons of money. You'd have to spend like I think inflation adjusted, it was like $100 for like a Super Nintendo game and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. So like I remember there was a Chrono Trigger was one of the games that I couldn't buy, but I could rent.
Right.
And I remember I would rent it with a friend. And we would hope that our saved game was still there from the last week that we rented it.
Oh, I
and
see.
we got it like a couple times in a row, but then like eventually we're like, oh, okay, we lost our saved game. But it's
you be overwritten or something, right?
yeah. But Blockbuster is they had a clay fighter tournament. I think I don't know if
wow.
which
That was the second year. I can tell you every single game.
yeah.
So Blockbuster. So the first year I entered, it was mostly like East Coast. And you had to play either Super Nintendo or Genesis. I went Super Nintendo. It was Tasmania. Second game was Super Star Wars. And each week they just took your high score. You had 3 minutes to get the highest score you could. So Tasmania, I was like 30th in the store. Super Star Wars the second week, and you didn't know the game until the following week, like a week before, and people would like rent them out to practice and shit.
Right.
So you either had to buy the game or whatever. It wasn't a surprise, but you had a couple days notice, right? I think so. And so the second week was like Super Star Wars. I had like 50th place. And then the third week was Street Fighter 2 Turbo on Super Nintendo.
Oh,
And
no.
my brothers had just bought it for the $80 that it was. I remember from a KB, it was like Toys R Us at the time or KB Toy Store. Before GameStop, there's EB Games, Babbage's. And that was actually my first job ever was at Babbage's, which today is GameStop. I worked there for like a year at 16. And then I worked at Blockbuster. But we had Super Nintendo. There's no internet. Prodigy.net was starting to come out. So you had to just, on instinct, know how to play these games.
Yeah.
So I'm going home and I'm playing 11 years old. And I discover that I can just throw 3 fireballs with Ken, get the computer dizzy every time. You had 3 minutes basically go through the PC or the computer CPU. And I threw 3 fireballs. They would get dizzy. I'd jump in Fierce Punch, jump Fierce Punch, Fierce
Dead.
TP, and almost death every time.
Yeah,
And then repeat, throw fireballs. So I literally got like 9 perfects in a row.
Wow.
And because of the score, they actually used the point system across all 3 games. My point system, because of that one game, made me the #1 in the entire country for Street Fighter.
Nice.
So
high
that-
score system. Yes.
It was a high score system of the 3 games with a timer. And so what happened was it basically skyrocketed my score. I went to the finals, which was like Magic Johnson slam dunk basketball at Disney World.
Okay.
And the video that I can link to you guys later has that footage. You can B-roll it in if you'd like.
Nice.
I've seen me as a little shit like, I won! Somebody hug me! You know, what you call it. But and then it was Super Magic. And then the first game I remember, it was a single elimination bracket. So I'm from the streets.
Okay.
And it was like the first person I played, I barely won by like 3 points. But something just possessed me, and I literally destroyed everyone by 20 points or more because I found another glitch. And I'm like that kid in The Wizard. You can pump fake the CPU, and every time you pump faked him, right, he would jump to block. You run around dunk. And that game was impossible to score 3-pointers. Like one kid won a game with a 3-pointer at the last second. I just kept pump faking, dunking, rinse, repeat.
It's a better strategy.
I've never lost a game in NBA Jam in 25 years, which is actually not a joke. So I won that. I got to go to, and this is what made me fall in love with Street Fighter, not just because I played it with my brothers all the time, but when I won that year, it was a free trip for 4. I took my 2 brothers and my mom to San Francisco to go to Game Pro, the magazine studio.
Oh, Game Pro. So
wow.
sick.
Yeah, EA Games. So EA Sports.
Yeah.
Anyways,
It's in the game, yeah.
And then the third one was Capcom Studio.
Nice.
And when I was at Capcom, I have a picture. It's somewhere in one of my drawers. There's a picture of me playing a Super Nintendo with the beta of Super Street Fighter 2, New Challengers.
Wow.
And it wasn't a cartridge. It was my first time ever seeing like development.
Right.
It was a giant like motherboard plugged into the Super Nintendo,
Oh my
like a dev
God.
kit.
Oh.
And I just was like, this is my passion, my love. And then I just started growing up in arcades and competing. And what sucked about Blockbuster, the next year was Clay Fighter, NBA Jam, and something else. My score was #1. I went to the finals again. I had to get disqualified because my family wanted to go to Lebanon, the Middle East where I'm from. And I'm crying like a little bitch, man. I'm like, I'm going to win again, Dad. He's like, you have to go spend time with him. I'm like, no. And that's where my dad literally said, you can't win everything. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, you mofo, I'm going to win everything, you know? So, but that's my history. You know, it's funny. What also helped me at the first one I won, my dad goes, if you beat this next guy, I'm going to give you $50 cash.
Ooh.
Back then, that was a lot.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, I was an 11-year-old
Oh,
kid where I'd get like $5 for lunch money, but like $50, I was like, and that was where money matches got in my head. And then, yeah, the rest is history. But thanks to my brothers, just playing everything. It ran in my family, dude. My brothers, we'd go to local places that had like pinball tournaments, and they would win those while I was winning like just whatever other cheesy game was there. And just, it's a competitive thing. I think obviously all our best Street Fighter players come from that arcade era until you come into the world of like the punks, the dudes and all that just leveled up by cheating using pads and not actual fight sticks. But,
Whoa, calling him
so-
out.
Pads? Pad players?
Yeah,
We got pad,
but I
pad
mean,
players
no, it's
now.
easier access. Like I tell people,
Yeah.
I would beat 90% of my opponents if they were on the same like controller as me. But I can't hold it against them for being able to learn leverless, which I try. My mind of 30 years of a stick, I can't do it.
Same.
Yeah.
It's really hard to adjust. And pad players, like I know the theory behind why pad players have the advantage, but I can never prove it because I'm not that efficient in.
Yeah,
using the pads,
it is what you're used to. But I mean, I think for me, like Super Nintendo Street Fighter 2 kind of got me to play on pad by force almost because I only had pad, right? If you look at Tekken players, a lot of the top Tekken players are pad players because of PlayStation, right? So there's
when
kind of
Tekken
like
3 came out.
yeah, but like with Street Fighter players, there's definitely more of a emphasis on the classic lever, Moss stick. I noticed in the back that you have there looks like some Moss sticks in the background in the arcade.
The old school
These
cabinets,
are all my a lot of my custom like controller chaos sticks.
Yeah.
I'll show you. But yeah, mostly Obsidian 2, Quamba. On the bottom, I have the original Ultra Street Fighter 4 stick with Ono's signature on it, which is pretty much faded.
Nice. Yeah.
So
The tees,
this was
yes.
good. And then I have, you can't see them in the back. There's a whole shelf with like 20 sticks.
Man.
Nice. You
If
have
I-
a whole museum there.
If I ever go over to over there to Orlando, I definitely want to like
we need the B-rolls
I want to film
crib.
your play. I want to
Yeah.
film your
You know, my house, what you see here is clean.
Yeah.
My kitchen is just shelves of just stuff from events and toys from Japan trips and stuff.
Yeah.
One of these days, I'm going to go once and for all, get rid of the shit that doesn't matter, and then do a tour of like a pristine collectible house because I
have
actually have
to.
2 more rooms with collect, so it's just I amassed it over the years and I regret it more than anything because I could have used that money to buy a millionaire home or something. But,
But yeah, I mean, I gotta give big shout outs to your dad, giving you a big motivation to be able to let you achieve all this, right? The physical stuff that you have in your room, as well as the achievements of your activity. When he mentioned you can't win everything, like it's something to do with when someone says, "Oh, you can't do a certain thing," and then you get this urge to say, "Watch me do it.
Yeah.
Watch me prove it." And that's what you've literally done, I think. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
really, really nice.
Well, that's why origin stories are really interesting. With just any of our guests, anyone you talk to in the FGC, their origin stories are it reflects on who they are today, right? So
Right.
it's kind of that's a crazy story that you were basically a kid and you were in the offices of fighting game companies when you were a kid,
Yeah.
and now you're
Yeah.
doing this as an adult. Making having meetings.
that is the
and
dream, man. Once I got the first like Capcom Pro Tour, CEO is one of the first Capcom Fighters community streams in history that kind of started out with the guys, the Haunts of the world and Matt Deasy back then that really started the Pro Tour with their company and stuff. And just back then, I was like, I only wanted to do CO in the tournaments to get Florida recognized because there was already EVO, which was established, right?
Yeah,
But
sure.
even the early EVO stories will tell you, like, Capcom would give them like keychains and little things, and they just wanted recognition from the companies that make the games.
Yeah.
And when you look back at like back then, where nobody talked to someone at Capcom unless you knew them directly, or like Valle and John Choi were, West Coast or out there. But now it's like you can DM them on, Instagram, Twitter. You can talk to everyone. So the information's always there. So back there is more of like a dream and now it's just like, this is my job and career, but I'm still a kid every time a company goes, hey, we want to bring this to your event. I'm like, really? Because I do it for the attendees and the fans, and also my ego on the side of like, I got everything like a circus ride. Like,
Yeah.
here's all the exhibits, guys, come on in type thing. But one more Blockbuster story, going back to renting games. So owning systems, we only owned Nintendo. I never had a Sega Genesis. But I got so lucky. I had a best friend, Sean Miller, was my next door neighbor. And I remember when we met, we were, like 8, 9 years old or whatever. And we grew up until we went off to college, right? I haven't really seen him in like a decade probably. And he would have a Genesis and I had Super Nintendo. So we would go back and forth to each other's houses.
That's how you do it.
So
Yeah.
because of him, I played sports games. And that's how I got so good at NBA Jam and other like NBA 2K. And then he came over and played, the Mega Mans of the world. And, so that was, and I played a lot of sports growing up, basketball, home run derby in my neighborhood. So having him gave me access to Sega. And then the first Sega system I ever got was a Dreamcast, to where when I moved out to college, I put everything in a white plastic bag from my bedroom. My asshole brother puts it to the hallway. My dad thinks it's trash and throws it out. So I literally had a Dreamcast with MVC2, the memory cartridge, and like 3 other games like Choo Choo Rocket and stuff, gone. And I didn't own a Dreamcast since then because I was like, what? So
Yeah.
And then Blockbuster, because I won that challenge, their store became like a stop in Florida. They had my picture up, like, this is the winner of the whole thing.
Oh,
And
wow.
my sister started working there because of that connection. And then I would literally illegally work there by putting up the movies just to hang out with my sister and like friends that worked there. And they'd give me free rentals and all that. So I grew a friendship with people that weren't my parents. Because my parents were amazing, but they're always like, stop playing video games, focus on school, which I did.
Yeah.
But they would my mom would drop me off to an arcade with like $1, come back 5 hours later, I'm still on the machine because nobody could beat me type thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, but Blockbuster, I kept doing that for like 4 or 5 years. Then my sister got married, moved away, but I stayed friends with the management there. And what happened was so to work at Blockbuster back then, because of rated R movies, you had to either be 18 years old or graduate high school. So I graduated at 17. The day after I graduated, I walked in, they hired me. So I worked at Blockbuster from my 17th birthday, basically, until like 20 years old before I moved out to college completely. But I was there for a few years, and at high school, I was like known as the Blockbuster guy, or they called me cool guy, which was not to compliment me. It was making fun of me. And now all those people are like divorced and miserable. Anyways.
Yeah, take that. Yeah. Revenge of the Nerds. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, so that's my kind of history with Blockbuster. But Earthbound, I'll never forget. We kept Earthbound late for like a week because I couldn't beat it. I literally played that game like 20 hours a day straight. And then when PlayStation 1 came out, 96, so I was 14. I was friends with the management. So what they would do was they would get new copies of the game to rent out. They would sell me a copy of the game at their wholesale price and I would take it home. So we would rent the original PlayStation with like the case from Blockbuster for like a weekend with a $100 deposit and then like $20 a day or whatever. And we kept renting them for like a month until my brother's like, let's just buy it. What are we doing? And then PlayStation, that's where I kind of developed my own, buy everything on my own money, working and stuff. And then, but the whole history of me is video games, man. If, I never wanted to be a TO from a business perspective. I just got fortunate to turn my, my hobby, my passion into a full-fledged career. And it's not just CEO. People think this is all because it's because I worked DreamHack 8 years and I get a salary from that. CEO's made me, I wouldn't have all this if it was just CEO money.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting because like you said, you started with gaming, but then you're immediately doing stuff that goes beyond that. You're working behind the scenes. You're working at Blockbuster. You've made it into the offices of these fighting game companies, and so I guess this kind of probably led to you ending up doing stuff with DreamHack. I'm wondering, what is kind of the road up to doing CEO? You mentioned DreamHack for a very long time. How did you get into DreamHack? And I guess was this during the 4 days, or did it start before that in the dark ages of the FGC? I guess kind of like what is the timeline of how you've progressed upwards towards CEO?
So the moment I graduated college, being a Canadian citizen, I had like a visa under my father because we're Lebanese. My family moved to Canada and they had me. As soon as they had me, the youngest of four, after 8 months afterwards, we moved to America. If they had just moved before they had me, I wouldn't have had such a struggle to get a citizenship until I was like 35 years old. Yeah. And so what happened was CEO gets created because I'm running tournaments. Somebody cancels it. It's a big history story. Everyone knows that some guy canceled the event within 3 weeks. I had already been doing like maybe 12, 13 monthlies on my own under like Jabali Presents before CEO is a word. Cancels the event called Game in Florida in 2010. And then, I'm like, well, I don't have money to go create a major. I've never done this before. And a Smash TO Plank, who's no longer around, he did Pound in the Maryland area. He's like, hey, I found a venue. It's like $3,000. I'm like, I go to my dad. I'm like, hey, can I borrow some money to do this event? We might make like $1,000 back. He's like, yeah, sure. So luckily, because my dad, he did that. Plank ran the Smash side. This is when I first met Hungrybox, when, still the guy that he is today. They ran Smash. I ran FGC, which was Street Fighter 4 with like 128 entrants. I ran literally the brackets by myself, helped the stream by myself with the streamer JT, who actually still does all the music entrances for CO. He plays the songs, he gathers them from the top eights.
Right.
So we're still good friends. And then we had like 1,000 people watching that when I had the CO gaming stream. It was like Street Fighter 4, Blaze Blue, Chrono Phantasma, Tekken 6. And then we had like 2 arcade cabinets with like CVS 2 and Third Strike that people were just on nonstop. And those pictures all over the internet. But it was like, I did that. And then 2011, I'm like, let's go bigger. We got Tokido Gamerby, right? And then the following year, it just, Daigo came on his own. So I had set goals. First year was just do a fun event, play Street Fighter 4, where I got bodied by 2 guys who have never beaten me since because somebody stole my phone right before the matches. And I didn't have a phone until the next morning. And I was very pissed off. Like Flash Metroid won that. We were always like going up against each other in finals. And then it was just a fun event. And then I'm like, you know what? That was 3 weeks. Let me see how I can do, talk to hotels. And I had an anime con at the Wyndham, which just shut down. And for my second year of CO, the first time we were at Wyndham, and they're like, hey, you seem passionate. We get a lot of people here, saying they want to do a big convention, but they don't have like it wasn't experience, but she just knew I was talking about. Right. And I had to learn about stuff. And then we did that with 900 people. And then, fast forward 2019, 11,000 because of the AEW and all that. And now we average about, 4,500 to 5,000. CO back in Orlando after 5 years in Daytona is going to crush all those numbers, which I'm really happy about. It's like, I've gone up and down my career with CO itself with like negativity about Florida and like, haha, suckers, it's the whole country now, stuff like that. So, and that really hurt. Like community itself can hurt its own community by, telling everyone else something that isn't true or, stuff. But I don't want to dive into that because I'm still a very positive outlooking person and we're back to where we need to be. I need to make up for a few years of Daytona. But anyways, so 2012, 20, the first year, do a good event. 2011, get two big names. And it was, Mike Ross and Gutex, when they were doing cross counter, they promoted, I just paid them for like flights to come out. I didn't want to spend money. I wanted to grow my event organically. I didn't want to go get celebrities and all that until down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
And then once Capcom Pro Tour was the thing, Daigo came out on his own, back then where he had an agency, kind of flying him out for a cost, but he came out on his own. And I'll never forget the moment he landed. I was a huge fan and still a huge fan today. And every time we see each other, I love the fact that I'll tell you another story in a minute, but he came, as soon as he got off, he was so tired and he, Gamerbee was translating. And he's like, hey, he's really hungry. I'm like, does he want pizza? He goes, yeah. So he takes 2 boxes of pizza, goes to his room and like eats it and just passes out. And we don't see him until the next morning ready to play.
Man.
But it was really cool to have him come out and then the event just grow and grow. And before like Combo Breaker came around, UFGT, Keats was my first big mentor. Me, Keats, Adam Hart, who works at Iron Galaxy,
Yes.
who got me in Dive Kick and who helped me get a job on Killer Instinct. We were talking on AIM Instant Messenger every day about how to run good tournaments. So I learned a lot from going to Chicago. And then me and Rick became really close. We still literally talk almost every single day about just everything as a whole, as friends and family and, tournaments. And Adam taught us everything. Then obviously he passed on to Rick. But UFGT was just a big local thing. Then Rick took it to the next level.
Okay.
And before that happened, it was like 2011, 2012, people would be like in my ear, like, dude, you could be the next Evo. Like, you're going to be as big as Evo one day, because it was always Evo, then everywhere else. Final round could have been up there, right, over the years. And it was huge
back in the day. Yes.
Yeah. And then, my history with that, we won't dive into that. But like times were changing in terms of quality events, and everyone just social media is coming out. So now you'd hear more about people's experiences, good or bad. And that would kind of motivate people to go places. And everyone's like, dude, CEO is incredible. It's so much fun. You got to go to CEO. And so it was at a point like 2012, Evo's inviting me to their suite, Mr. Wizard back then, and the Cannon's like, hey, your event's doing really well. It was almost like they were happy somebody else was creating something that they felt could be as successful as them, and to kind of partner up. And that's when Road to Evo started.
Yeah, that's right.
And then politics came into play and that stopped. But luckily at the Pro Tours, because again, we just wanted these companies to recognize us and use us to give the players more opportunities. And now look how big Capcom Pro Tour is, right?
Yeah.
So me and Rick kind of built our ideas and grew from that. Combo Breaker's a huge, back then, I always tell people this like historical geographic story. It was California, New York, Texas, like Texas Showdown, Javi and all that, right?
Yeah.
That was it. There was no Florida scene. There was no like Northwest scene, it was all SoCal, NorCal. That now, like Midwest is number one, man, between Frosties and in terms of like offline competition and people traveling to their regionals and stuff. And then New York is still kind of there thanks to Spooky, right? And everything they created. Texas is still there. California, unfortunately, like God bless Vi and them, it's so expensive. I've done events out there with DreamHack San Diego. It's a racket. Yeah. And we'll get into that about internet and venue stuff. But so what happened with DreamHack? I always knew of DreamHack on the, it was esports. I was never an esports guy. I never watched StarCraft. I played it. I play almost every game. Like I still play Call of Duty. Now they added the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in there for $20 a pop. Jesus Christ.
Oh man, they're in everything.
But I got Donatello and he's so worth it. But so what happened was DreamHack had its first event ever. And after college, I worked a family business. I meant to finish that story of selling Disney World tickets. My dad owned a hotel in the 80s when he moved here and sold Disney tickets. So for 13 years after college, I worked with the family business because I couldn't get a job. So I had to go through a visa process through the family business, then turn into a green card and all that stuff, right? 2014 comes, I have my my work visa. I'm good to go anywhere I want. Iron Galaxy is a thing with a Killer Instinct contract. And Dive Kick had already been out for 2 years. So I had Dave Lang. What happened was I was very close with the Iron Galaxy crew, and thanks to Keats and putting me in Dive Kick, right? And then I think what happened was they took me to PAX when I was in Dive Kick and had like beat the pro. And Dave Lang's like, for everyone you lose, I'm going to deduct your paycheck or something funny. And I think, and everyone got a free poster. I lost to like 3 out of 65 people.
That's good enough.
Just because of that. Again, it was like my father challenging me, right? And he remembered that how good I was with people coming up to the booth and talking, and just I have a personality. We all know this. 2014 comes. Dave Lang goes, hey, would you like to come out to lunch with me and someone else from the company? I go, sure. We sit down. He goes, hey, Alex, we're about to get the Killer Instinct contract from Microsoft, right? And this is when community management was such an important role to all these companies. Like, you need someone to check the emails, gather the feedback, save the directors and stuff time for meeting everything and just give them the important stuff. And Dave's like, hey, we're getting Killer Instinct. Would you be interested in working with us as community manager? Because your name is always the first one that comes up that everyone that knows you.
Nice,
and I'm in Orlando, and they just had an office. So gives me that opportunity. I'm there for like 2 years. They send me to Tokyo Game Show to show Dive Kick for the first time on the Square Enix stage, which that's when that was my peak. That was when I sat there. I go, I'm a character in a video game flown to Japan to talk about said video game while playing with the crowd. Like, it doesn't get better than that. And that's where I was like, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life, is just be in the industry and work. And 2 years later, Killer Instinct's like going into season 3. This Avid Gaming company comes out of nowhere. If you guys remember, it was supposed to be like a betting website, like MLG Game Battles from back in the day.
I think
and
I
like,
do.
hey,
Yeah.
we got this huge investment money, like millions of dollars. We're building out an office, which they did in Orlando, right in downtown. Beautiful. An office that was almost like, how did you afford this type of thing?
Right.
It was coming from some big Call of Duty backer. And we're there, and they literally go, hey, Alex, we want to hire you. They sponsored Combo Breaker. They sponsored CEO. Like, you're in Orlando. We'd like to hire you to do events for us. And then even Capcom came out and toured their office before CEO, the people that were there at the time. And just to talk about like, hey, we'd like to do a World Finals, all this stuff. And they're like, hey, we want you to work here full time and leave the other job. I'm like, I'm really happy at our Galaxy. And I was. And they're like, what would it take to get you here? And I threw out a number, and they're like, here's the check. I'm like, fuck.
Oh, what? Okay.
Yeah. So I took the money. It wasn't like million. It wasn't crazy, but it was good.
Yeah.
But I also felt like I was getting at a time where CEO is growing, and it might be time to put all my life into events. So I take that job. We sit in an office for 6 months. I have to put out the tweet almost every fucking day, coming soon, coming soon, coming soon, which became a meme.
Yeah.
Right.
And they had a real team. They were working. Everything was ready to go, but they just couldn't cross the finish line of an actual product. And I go, hey, I'm like, my 6-month contract's about to end. You don't have anything yet. This is really hurting my reputation because I'm the only one in this company that everyone knows because we're focusing on fighting games first. So if nothing's out at that 6 month, I'm putting in my 2 weeks. I put in my 2 weeks, right? At that time, between the Iron Galaxy job and the Avid Gaming job, I had like 2 weeks off. Gaming Generations, who supplies equipment to every major event, and they helped CEO since 2012, thanks to Rick in the Midwest and Focus Fire and stuff like that. And what happened was Evan's like, hey, we're going to be at DreamHack Austin, which was their first US DreamHack ever, right? They were expanding into America. Can you come out and admin Pokken tournament for Pokemon? So it was a tournament. It was a part of like the Pokemon series at the time for Pokken, right? And I go, sure. So I went out there, and then I literally got introduced to everyone at DreamHacks, and they all knew who I was from fighting games. Like, hey, they did Smash as well. They did like a Street Fighter area, and they had people that could run that stuff, but they didn't have a name attached. And so they're like, hey, we would love to work with you in the future, help us build up fighting games. We know you do CEO. And at the time, it was really just CEO, Evo, final round, like, the NEC Big E series. And that was it. And then SoCal regions, all those popped up. And now a lot of those events are gone, unfortunately. So they're like, hey, keep in touch. I'm like, sure. So I get the Avid job. This was like October, and then May was that DreamHack. The day I leave that job, at the time, Event Hubs is always writing about me. Shuriken's like, Yahoo had that Esports with Mike Martin, which is a great, source.
Yeah, I remember
of
that.
news.
Yeah.
And I was in every article like, Jabali's leaving this guy, Jabali's going there. I was almost everywhere too much.
Celebrity.
And the article goes out, Jabali's leaving Avid Gaming. I shit you not, the very next day, DreamHack, his name's Mike. He still works there in Sweden. He goes, hey, we see you're out of a job. What do you plan to do? I'm like, I don't know yet. He's like, would you like to work for us part-time and consult and do fighting game turns? Like, I'll take it. So first year, not a lot of pay. It was worth each event at the time, obviously, but it wasn't like year-round work. It was organize the event. I could still do CEO. And then the first year of that contract, I was in Sweden for DreamHack Winter. They go, hey, we want you full-time. Here's the offer. I go, I happily accept. I've been a DreamHack ever since, and things have changed drastically. We've done, but the fact that DreamHack, it wasn't CEO, it was DreamHack that sent me to I got to do DreamHack Korea, DreamHack Rotterdam, DreamHack Sweden like 9 times, so going worldwide everywhere. DreamHack Melbourne. I got to go for Pokken.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, this is my job. I'm, COVID. They kept me around. I was doing like online interview content with some celebrities through them, with Regan, who's no longer at the company. And so I was just always a part of that DreamHack team as like one of the main, knew I was at a DreamHack. I've been to like 32 now. Like 30 of them I've worked in some capacity.
Yeah.
And so, that was just the DreamHack lore, and I'm still there. And then last year, Esports World Cup is a thing, the second year of Gamers 8.
Yeah.
Are you interested in moving on to this team? I go, what are the details? What's the workload? Boy, it's a workload, my friend. I'll tell you that. It's a huge project in Saudi Arabia, and I'm Middle Eastern Lebanese. So I just think, supporting my background, being out there,
Sure.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I had an incredible time. The times are changing, the nenewer generation Prince and everything is like, he's a gamer, man. He's like a gamer with all the money in the world.
Yeah. I've heard, I've heard stories about him. I think he has like he has a blood build in Elden Ring and like all these kinds of.
He's like a true gamer.
One of them was there. One of the other princes was there watching Street Fighter while watching Fortnite in the other arena on his iPad.
Okay.
Like that's how like in tune.
Multitasking in a viewership mode. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I think it was because he does the awards as well. So he had to know when one thing was finishing Jump Around. But I talked to him for a few minutes. He's like, what, just really cool experience. And so I've been on that team, but I still consult all of DreamHack and EFG. So it's just me and Tong there really from the FGC wholeheartedly. But everyone there is creative, easy to talk to, work with. I've been mentored. Even I've had like 5 bosses over the years, and each one teaches me so much to not just be mature, but understand things from like a higher level that help me with my event CEO.
Yeah.
So just fortunate. Again, DreamHack has been my bread and butter in terms of like finances and using that money to put into CEO. And but it's like I said, COVID. They could have laid a lot of us off, so I'm very loyal to that company. After being there, I've been there 8 years now. So
one thing I'm kind of curious about is, I mean, you've been through the thick of it. You've been doing this stuff for a very long time. I remember in an interview I did with you a long time ago, you mentioned that you started with like doing Super Street Fighter 2 tournaments just hosted at your house with like the mode. They had like the tournament mode.
With
8-player tournament mode, right? So he was doing that. You've been doing this since the beginning, and now you've been doing this at some of the highest levels. Doing stuff with the EWC and of course with DreamHack and CEO. You've worked with the Evo guys and everyone. You're in a pretty good position to kind of see how the landscape of the competitive fighting gaming is going, right? And so I guess one of the things that people are worried about these days is obviously rollback. FGC finally got their way, and these major titles are getting rollback, and in a sense, that's it's great. But then at the same time, because online is so good, now there's kind of like offline tournaments are now, a lot of people think it's not as necessary, right? And so, I guess you would know firsthand what the value of like an offline tournament is, and I guess you probably would have an idea of what the future of these tournaments look like. So does it look good, or does it look kind of bleak right now that it's going to just dwindle down into a few major tournaments? How do you see the future of it offline?
Yeah, I think the latter. Obviously, CEO, Combo Breaker, Evo is in a great spot with the Sony RTS partnership. Like it has a real team. Evo was at the right place at the right time with the right people that grew something special that inspired even me, right?
Yeah.
But even then, it was exhausting for 4 guys to run these massive events and then like kind of hire their friends or staffing. But now they have a huge business behind it that is based on gaming. It's helpful. Ivan Evo helps me with some of my sponsorships and stuff. So I think the major events were here to stay for better or worse, unless something major happens. In a good way. And again, I'm the first one to want to troll Twitter or online, but it's just miserable. And everyone that's miserable does not go to offline events, because everyone who goes to an offline event will tell you this was one of the best weekends of my life.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So they're necessary. Our events actually change lives for the better. One year I went to 4 weddings, 3 of which met either at my house as a group setting or at CEO. So I always would give a speech and shit and be like, hey, I'm so happy for them, but also don't forget to register for, shit like that.
Gotta chill.
But what's your god? So I think the landscape has changed. We lost a lot of those, I don't want to say mid-level, but the events that had 1,000, 2,000 people, because it's just expensive as shit, man. And I still have to risk every year. It's not like this event's safe. I don't know if it's safe until like May when registration's about to close, luckily, being such a big entity with like all these streams and Tong and TNS, what he built over COVID, and the support of all these events kind of working together more than ever. I think communication is way better than ever in terms of helping each other, giving advice and stuff. But I will tell you, if I was Jabali today without an event in the past, I would not be able to create a CEO now. It's just too expensive. It's hard. I've mentored a lot of people over the years, or somebody's like, hey, we want to do a huge event our first year. I'm like, you're going to fail. It doesn't work that way. You got to do a small event, have everyone that's there happy. Then they tell everyone to come the next year, and then you grow from there. But you've seen so many esports events like come out and go, yeah, we're going to do FGC, huge. And then have you seen them since?
Yeah.
One event and they're done. So we're in a good spot. The numbers are going up. I mean, if we were dying, Combo Breaker would have like 2,000 people. I'd be at like 1,000. You know what I mean? But Evo's like 22,000, some crazy number. So we're growing. There's more communication in terms of dates and when your event is, and stuff like that in advance. The companies are invested. Tekken still invested. Street Fighter's invested. Who knows what else is coming? So I think we're in a good spot. Fighting games are in a great sport because when esports bubble bursts with all these like teams and sponsorships directly, we're still gonna have the community coming out because name one esport event like an Apex Legends or League of Legends, not saying anything negative about, but name one of them where all those players at the event go to their hotel rooms and play casuals. They don't. They literally go in to compete for money and then they go home or they celebrate or they, take pictures of it. But FGC, like, we want to just keep playing and sit down with other people, right? And connect outside of the tournaments themselves. And that's what sets us apart from everyone else. Everything else is a spectator mode. I would love Street Fighter and all that to get. And it's incredible. It's funny. I was just in Japan for some meetings. And the first day I get there, Markman goes, oh, you're in Japan, right? I'm like, yeah, because my Instagram. He goes, are you going to Yokohama? I'm like, for what? He goes, Street Fighter League Japan finals is happening. Like, dude, if I had known that like 24 hours prior, I would have gone straight there, something to check it out. Because I had like 3,000 people.
Yeah.
And then you can go on a street. There'll be Street Fighter stream on a window, right? Like the old, the 70s where they're walking by the TV shop all staring. And they're watching someone stream. I'm like, this is incredible. America's too spread out for that kind of stuff, but we have the at-home streams. But and I think we're still getting new players. I honestly believe if there wasn't leverless or controllers weren't better, keep you up with sticks and seeing people win with pads and stuff, we would probably have less players. But now that there's leverless, I think it's getting a lot of those PC players in, from the COVID era that were PC gamers coming out. So I think we're still growing. I think the boom is over. I don't think we're going to ever get anything like when Street Fighter 5 2016 happened. But Street Fighter 6, incredible game. Fatal Fury's on its way. And then 2XKO, hopefully sooner than later. We're all kind of waiting, wondering what's going on there.
A lot of new fighting games this year too, yeah? So, a lot of things to see. We also had a similar experience when we went to Japan. We went to the department store. I think it was a big camera.
Yeah, it was just
store.
A big camera. It was like a mainstream store.
That was the... we went to the gaming section, obviously, for gamers. And then we can see all these arcade sticks with the display and everything. And there's like photos of like Daigo and Mago and that. It's like, oh, you never really see this in local stores.
In those sections you usually see like Apex Legends or some of the more like
Dota
like
or
different
League of
genres
Legends
and stuff like that. But it was cool to see like and they
familiar
had like
faces.
But they were selling like a PC gaming equipment and you had like the stations and they had like a fighting game station where I think they had Street Fighter 6 on and they had and like you can choose between like there was like a hitbox and like a Mad Cat stick and like all these like sticks that you can choose from and I remember it was it's interesting because I think in Japan right now Street Fighter 6 is blowing up in a way that's
huge.
like not just players, there's spectators. People are really interested because they get a lot of
don't play the game are turning up to see their favorite players. That's a big deal, right?
Which and then of course there's still the community players who want to play the game, which is going to be there, and that's what the FGC depends on. So I think the FGC is in a good place right now. And I think there's a lot of games coming out, but I guess like, so there's always this kind of thing. I've heard, I've heard Justin say this. I've heard a few other people when I talk with them about so many games in the FGC, right? So like, there's kind of on social media is kind of people celebrate the idea like, oh, FGC's doing great because there's so many new games and all these games coming out. But then on the other hand, there's some people that feel that if there's too many games, it kind of spreads the community and splits it apart in a way that's it's like, okay, well now like people are spending time on this game, so they can't spend time on this game, and now the communities are kind of like getting balkanized because of that, right? So is I don't know, what are your thoughts on that, Alex? Like
no, I agree. I don't think it's a bad thing, but it definitely affects it. Right? Like imagine there's only like 2-3 fighting games. Like me personally, Tong and I argue about him. It's like, dude, do we have to do 30 tournaments? He's like, Alex, people come. I'm like, you're right. And he's like, even if there's 10 unique people, it's worth it. And I 100% agree.
Yeah.
But it's almost exhausting to a point where it's too much to keep up with. So I think our stream numbers are down across the board because you don't know what the hell to watch, right?
Yeah.
And I think obviously the Capcom Pro Tour is always the number one most watched thing, then shortly Tekken behind it because it focuses on that. They've created stories, incredible websites where you can track stuff, and stories like that. And then all the other games, Arc System Works has a great tour every year, and they really support. SNK has been doing with King of Fighters the last few years, and it's like there are too many games. So as somebody coming in new, you got to really latch on to either find the game that you and your personal friends have a good time with, or you find a player and they inspire you to play that specific game, right? I don't think somebody's watching Daigo and go, man, Daigo's really good at this fighting game. Let me go play Tekken, type of thing. They'll want to go play Street Fighter. So, I think Street Fighter, the one thing I'll always say, and I might get blasted for this, the Mortal Kombat community doesn't have those staples. There's Sonic Fox, there's Tom Brady back in the day, Chris G was a huge Mortal Kombat player, Perfect Legend, but it's a small amount of them, but they're always dogging their own community and their own games. They're playing, they're killing everyone, destroying people, but it's like it doesn't grow because I can't explain it, but I just, for some reason, Mortal Kombat's had a hard time from a leadership perspective in terms of promoting the games. And it's not always their fault. It's the developers and what they do with their games. And I remember early Street Fighter, would patch every 6 months, a year. And I think that's the perfect way. 6 months, every year.
I like
when
that.
Mortal Kombat was doing it after every single tournament, even I stopped playing Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. I was a big competitor in MKX days, right?
You beat Sonic Fox in a match, right?
I actually did get games off of Sonic Fox, luckily.
Yeah.
But then, other than that, it's just even Sonic Fox himself said it like he's afraid to win a tournament because he knows for sure that his character will get nerfed the next week, something like that, right? That was a really extreme days back in the day where I had a combo and a setup that I practiced solely so that I could level up, and then the week later it's obsolete. Like, how can you have a competitive game like that? Like, it's,
well, that's the problem with the patch culture of a game. When you look at a game to invest your time in, I think I accept patching now. I mean, I know I'm like a old school player who loves the arcade culture of like this is the game and that's it. But I do like I know we're living in the new age now, and to have a patch that comes out like every once or twice a year is like, I think that's great, right? People can wait for the patch and they can get there and they can have time to kind of see if people are right or wrong about like what the characters like overpowered moves are, or and it's not just this kind of knee-jerk reaction where you're changing everything because like this one thing was like the popular move of the week, and then like you're modifying it. So
I mean, I don't know. CO's the reason that Tanya created the MK Pro Tour rule of a character has to be out for 30 days because
Tanya was
it was 20. I forgot, but the funniest story, and this is public before, Ed Boon is there, and he's on a phone call with the dev team, like, who allowed this shit in the game?
Oh, man.
Because the crowd was counting every time Tanya did EX drill.
Yep.
And it got up to like 88 or some insane number. And there was 7 out of 8 Tanyas in that top 8. And it was just like, and after that, that's what set the rule. And now every CO gets a patch like right before, so I'm friggin' cursed. And Final Fantasy's always had an update. And guess what they do this year? The Magic the Gathering version of Final Fantasy comes out the week of CO. It's like, my God, it's always a Final Fantasy thing. It's like Square is following me and doing this on purpose.
Yeah, you're wearing a Final Fantasy shirt as well.
Yeah, I know, right? Seventh Heaven, Yeah, we did Dissidia one year. They actually promoted and supported it. So
nice.
Kenny Omega, one of my real life best friends, he's he does the music. Nobu Uematsu's team made him a song.
He's a
Oh
goat.
my God,
So,
yeah, legend. Yeah.
And I can't say too much, but I know what he's gonna do, and it's when I hear it, his passion, his excitement makes me excited for him and so happy for him because he's just as big a fan of all this shit as I am, if not bigger. So, and that's how our friendship started from fighting games.
I have a funny story with Kenny. I don't know if Kenny will remember this. All right, this is one of
You know what's funny? Real quick, you say that when Kenny lived with me for 6 months before when he moved to Orlando from Japan while his house was being built, and he would meet my friends or someone I was dating or whatever, and then 3-4 years later, I'd say a name. He's like, "Oh, that one person we went to the movie with." Like he remembers everything. It's kind of crazy sometimes because even I don't remember everything anymore.
Wow.
So,
Hopefully he remembers this. I don't know. Well, it's not a big deal, right? It's just a funny story.
right.
It was one of the Evo Japans. I think it was not the first one. Oh, it was the year when Book won Tekken. It was when there was like 7 Leroys.
Leroy Gate. Yeah, I remember that.
So that year, Kenny was present, obviously, for like, I think he was emceeing and interviewing people as well.
Yeah.
So I think day one ended, and then everyone was like leaving. The weather was terrible. It's like raining and like almost a stormy kind of weather.
Yeah.
And me, Punko, and Z was trying to grab a cab back to our hotel because we were at the same hotel. We weren't sharing the same room, but we were at the same hotel.
Okay.
Me, Punko, and Z. And I think Kenny also mentioned in one of his interviews, like he randomly just met Punko at a Japanese arcade back in Street Fighter 4 days, and Punko was like, "Who's this Western guy like coming up to me playing Street Fighter?" And
Punko asking who
bodied him or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's like an older story, but yeah. So we were waiting for a cab, and then Kenny just randomly walks in. Like, "Hey, can I grab the taxi with you guys?" I'm like, "Sure." So it's like. We're all cramped up in the taxi. We went to a hotel, and it's like, what's the chances of meeting Kenny Omega, like drenched in the rain? He's like asking to get in the cab with you, like the fellow FGC players, right?
That's
and
really
Punko
cool.
was there. He doesn't remember Kenny.
He still doesn't
I'm
remember.
like,
That's so
you played
Punko. I don't think
But
Punko.
Kenny
I'll
remembers
text Kenny
Punko,
this after the
obviously.
call. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if he remembers, but it was a funny random encounter, my encounter with Kenny.
No,
personally,
I've met Punko like the 30 times, and I don't think he remembers me.
Yeah,
it's just like
Punko asked me later when we got off the cab. I'm like, "Who was that guy?" I'm like, "That was Kenny Omega." What are you talking
that's
about?
a classic Punko story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
I
funny.
beat Punko at CVS2 at a tournament. He was using K-Groove, Kyo,
Oh,
Rock,
really?
and all that.
You
He
beat
was
Punko?
salty.
He's actually good at CVS2.
CVS2, he was salty. It was incredible.
Great.
Because
Nice.
Justin Wong, here's what happened. Justin Wong gave a spot up to Punko. It was a side tournament, so nobody really cared.
Yeah.
But Justin Wong's like, "I gotta go." Punko takes over. And I'm like, "Fuck," And I beat Punko because he wasn't ready for my aggressive K-Groove. And he was I've never seen a guy, how he plays like this.
gets salty.
He's the ham like player, the gamble.
He'll like
style
look
player,
away.
right?
He'll be like,
Yeah.
and that was him every time I beat him, and everyone was losing their shit, and I won that tournament. It was
That's
great,
the only way
so.
you can get Punko to remember you.
But
You have
Punko
to beat them.
being serious at CVS2 is a real thing because you know how the new Capcom collector, what is it? Fighting
CFC2,
collection is coming out.
Yeah.
Punko came out of his hibernation, posts on social media, "I want to play CVS2 seriously again when this collection comes out." That's what he mentioned.
Wow. Okay.
So
Good.
he's actually a real like avid CVS2 player. So
yeah.
Tell him to come out to
Yeah.
CEO, man. I'm working on something
hopefully
great
one
for
day,
because the collection will be out.
He could be
Yeah.
one of the OGs who could represent some of the retro fighting games. So
Yeah.
it'd be
yeah.
pretty cool.
I guess since we've been talking about Kenny Omega, I guess another side of you, Alex, is that you have kind of a pro wrestling. Would it be okay to say it's a career, or would that be right, or is it
No,
kind of
it was a stunt
dabbling?
that I wanted to do more than COVID happened. Actually, I was gonna get. I've always had I was a scrawny kid, but then when I started doing that stuff, or when I tore my Achilles tendon, I have a really high pain tolerance. So, but it was always a dream. I loved wrestling and stuff, and it was just to have fun with CEO and all that. But then I started getting real training, and then the injury happened, and then everything happened after that. But I would have loved to have done more and got real long-term training. I was very fortunate to get the opportunities that I was in such a short time span. But it was for CEO. It was never to impress the wrestling world. And Kenny to this day still says my match was one of his favorites because it was just entertaining and fun. And obviously, it is hard to run your own event and be in a match, like when you're not an actual full-time wrestler.
Yeah.
And so I was running all, and like nobody bothered me for the next freaking 3 hours. I'm going into that mode, type of thing. So, but no, I wouldn't say career. It was just a brief stunt that
Okay.
I wish I'd done more with, because now that I understand, and when Kenny lived with me, we would watch a lot of wrestling, and his critiques just taught me so much about understanding. And, if I had known him 10 years ago and I got into wrestling, every match he has with everyone's incredible. I
Yeah,
wouldn't say I'm
yeah.
talented to be at that level ever, but like I learned so much from him. It definitely would have helped me if I had known it sooner and kind of applied that. Because who knows? I'm 42 now. Yeah, you don't get into wrestling. You either start in your early 20s or you don't do it at all.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Makes
There's only
sense.
been like 2 exceptions. Diamond Dallas Page when he was like in his 30s and got into it, and look how successful he is now.
Yeah.
And so, I wish I did more. I really had fun, man. Like, I was not nervous when I was in that crowd at CEO. It was like 5,000 people. I just did the best I could. Had fun with it. And then I was going to do more. I was going to all the AEW stuff backstage. And then COVID happened and everything kind of just went the other direction. So,
Okay, yeah.
but yeah, I would love to. I still need to finish a match out with Michael Nakazawa one day. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. It's 1-1
yeah.
right now or something.
It's 1-1. I told Kenny, like, I have to stay undefeated, so my Twitter profile will forever say undefeated pro wrestler. And he's like, no, you're gonna have a third match. You need to lose. Like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And then and then COVID happened. We didn't get to have that third match.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
it was a
day.
great time, man.
One
I
day.
still pay attention. I'm still friends with a lot of people at AEW, and for me as a fan to do those matches, and then be backstage and have Chris Jericho go, "Hey, Alex, what's up?" Like,
Oh,
hey,
Chris
like,
Jericho. Wow. Okay.
yeah.
Oh, he's a big
So
deal,
I went to
yeah.
his
Nice.
49th birthday party after one of the shows.
Ah,
Like, he
sick.
treated me very well. And always nice to me, but everyone. And I would be backstage with some other names I won't say, but I'm like talking to them, and like, Kenny asked me for like a pep talk or something. He's like, like I would get advice, like everyone, no matter who you are, always needs a good pep talk from someone they care about, So
Yeah.
I learned a lot of cool shit. It also helped me with booking arenas, and, I learned at the business level of how things were run. So, if you gave me money or you put me in a wrestling company, I like behind the scenes, I could help run everything. Like, I really could
yeah.
see how it runs, like ticket sales out. So I learned a lot in a
Yeah.
short period of time. And I would say that 2018 to 2019 period was my peak of like my personal professional happiness, doing so much crazy shit that people didn't think was possible that happens, and I'm very proud of. So
Awesome,
I look
yeah.
back to that, but now, it's so funny. Like, I got the EWC job. I'm like, okay, I'm in a really good position. I'm going to focus on this product. I don't think I have to grind anymore. I'm grinding more than freaking ever, to continue this career and keep growing and do some crazy
Yeah.
stuff.
Well,
So it's,
speaking of which, I remember you were mentioning all the different games that you have to deal with, right? For tournaments.